Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. Today I'm going to be talking about endometriosis surgery. And this follows on from last episode where I mentioned briefly having endometriosis surgery and when it may be a good idea, and that prompted a couple of you to get in touch to ask specifically whether I would recommend endometriosis surgery for you. So this podcast is an answer to you and to all of the women out there who are considering having surgery. As you know, I'm a massive advocate for natural endometriosis management. I've been doing it myself. I've been helping women to do it for many, many years. And so my natural response is to try and avoid surgery as much as you can. As we know, endometriosis loves a good scar tissue, and chances are that if you're having endometriosis surgery, that your endometriosis, if it does come back, will adhere itself to the location of the surgery. So it's always best to minimise the type of surgery or the amount of surgery that you have. That said, there is absolutely a place for endometriosis surgery, and I'm not against it per se. I kind of talk about endometriosis surgery and lump everything together. So in this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of surgery that you can have and which of those surgeries I would recommend. And again, there's a slight caveat. I do just want to acknowledge that I come from this topic with a slant, kind of with an agenda, but definitely from a place of privilege. I've been really lucky in that my endometriosis has never been to the severity levels where I've just wanted everything out. And I've heard so many women over the years say, do you know what, I've had enough, I just want everything out, just whip everything out and be done with it. And my place of privilege is such that I've never got to that point. Thankfully, my endometriosis was diagnosed before the symptoms were crippling, and I've managed to work with my body and work with my endometriosis so that it never actually has got that bad. So I do acknowledge that for some women, surgery feels like it's the only way. And really, the blunt answer to the question is, would you recommend endometriosis surgery for me, is to sit with that person and go through the exact reasons why they want endometriosis surgery, to look at all the alternatives and to look at the possibility that the alternatives would be successful. And by that, I don't just mean long-term outlook, but also the length of time potentially it could take to get relief from symptoms. Because whilst endometriosis management is possible naturally, it's not an easy or a quick fix. So I completely get that for some women, surgery feels like and is possibly the only way forward in the short term. But if you're looking at surgery, there are different options, and it's really, really important to understand what your options are, because quite often, and I must admit this has improved since my own journey with endo and with Western medicine 20 plus years ago, it has got better, but there is still a lack of recognition, a lack of knowledge, a lack of information for women who are faced with surgery. Quite often they aren't given the full range of options available to them. So hopefully this episode will help women who are facing surgery, who are trying to weigh up whether or not to have surgery and what type of surgery to have. So let's start with a hysterectomy. So I'm going to make a bit of a bold statement here. I will never recommend hysterectomy for endometriosis. That might look slightly different if you have a dual diagnosis of adenomyosis or if you have other things going on. But purely for relief from endometriosis symptoms, you will never ever find me saying that yes, I completely believe you should have a hysterectomy. Now, I'm not irresponsible enough or naive enough to think that women aren't going to have hysterectomies, and I completely understand why women do. And if you are listening to this podcast and you have had a hysterectomy, you're worried about your symptoms coming back and your symptoms may already be coming back, then I absolutely empathise with where you are. I completely get why you had a hysterectomy. I don't blame you for that decision. We are just left feeling so isolated and so alone and so without any other options. And that is the fault of the medical system. It lets us down completely. But that said, I will never advocate for a hysterectomy with endometriosis. Other surgeries absolutely have a place. actually, what I should say is, well, there are different types of hysterectomy. So whilst I'm going to be breaking down different types of surgery, I probably should break down the different types of hysterectomy as well. I won't recommend any of these surgeries for endometriosis. Like I say, completely different if you've got other stuff going on, completely different if you do have other diagnoses and don't have endometriosis. But specifically for endometriosis, if you are considering any of these hysterectomies, then I would absolutely sit down with your specialist, with your surgeon, with your gynecologist, with the person who's referred you for the surgery, and just ask why they're recommending that type of surgery specifically. So it could be that you've had other surgeries that haven't worked. It could be that that the person that you're talking to actually isn't particularly aware of the different types of surgery, because sadly that is still the case in some situations. So absolutely sit down with the person who's referring you, absolutely sit down with the person who's recommending the hysterectomy, and ask them why they think it's the best step forward. Take that information away, digest that information, talk to other people, talk to other people who've been in that situation, talk to everybody and anybody you can, just to formulate a bigger picture and then make a decision. So in terms of the different types of hysterectomy, you can have a total hysterectomy, which is essentially where your womb and your cervix are removed. And that's probably, I think, the most common hysterectomy. So when people talk about hysterectomy, most of the time they're talking about a total hysterectomy. But you can have different types. So you can actually have a radical hysterectomy, where obviously it's the womb and the cervix, but also your ovaries, fallopian tubes, even sometimes part of the vagina as well is cut away. Sometimes the lymph glands, and sometimes the surrounding tissue as well. So as the name suggests, that really is a proper radical surgery. On the lesser end of the spectrum, you can have just a hysterectomy where the womb is removed, where the cervix is left in place, and it's literally just the womb that's removed. You can have the womb and one ovary and fallopian tube removed, or you can have the womb and both ovaries and fallopian tubes removed. So there are options within the whole sphere of hysterectomies. There's also different ways to have a hysterectomy as well. So you can have it via laparoscopy, you can have it via vaginal operation, where literally the womb is removed through an incision just at the top of the vagina. And you can also have an abdominal hysterectomy where, as the name suggests, they make an incision in your tummy and take the womb out that way. So there's different options within the realm of hysterectomy. The issue I have with hysterectomy is that it won't solve your endometriosis. If you do have adenomyosis, if you have endometriosis in the vicinity of the womb, and you have a radical hysterectomy, and even in some other cases as well, you may see a slight improvement in your symptoms immediately after surgery, but chances are your endometriosis will come back, because like I say, it's widely known and widely talked about that a hysterectomy will not cure endometriosis. So for me, personally speaking, and I'm not a doctor, I cannot diagnose anybody, I can't recommend surgery, or I can't recommend treatments per se, but for me personally, my personal opinion is that the price we pay longer term for a hysterectomy, without it being a cure for endometriosis, in my view, is too high a price, especially when there are alternative options available to us. So what are those alternatives? So when we talk again about surgery for endo, aside from the hysterectomy, you can also have surgery that will remove the endometriosis tissue, that will remove the adhesions and the lesions. And they mainly form two types. So you have ablation surgery and excision surgery, and they are essentially kind of doing the same thing in some respects. They are both getting rid of the tissue, they're getting rid of the endometriosis. The ablation is essentially using a laser, using heat treatment or laser treatment predominantly, to burn away, for want of a better word, the endometriosis. So it essentially destroys the endometriosis tissue. Excision surgery essentially cuts it out. Now, I've heard sort of really bad press about, well, to be honest, I've heard bad press about both, and most people tend to favour one. The thing I would say here, and I'm not going to give an opinion on which of these is better, because it very much depends on many things, including the surgeon that you've been allocated or that you find. It depends on the severity, the size of the endometrial adhesions, the lesions, the lumps of endometriosis you've got, how deeply infiltrating they are. So I would never issue a blanket, yes, definitely ablation is better, or definitely don't choose ablation. It very much depends on your individual circumstances. So again, have conversations with the person who's suggesting which surgery you go for. Try and understand why they're suggesting it. Try and get from them their reasoning behind it. If you're not 100% satisfied that this is the option for you, then again, go and get second, third even opinions wherever you can. If you are in the UK, then the patient charter gives us that absolute right to ask for a second opinion, to see a different doctor, a different GP, a different surgeon or specialist, and do exercise that right, because if you're not 100% certain that the surgery that they're recommending is the right surgery for you, then talk to people before you sign that consent form. Exactly the same with hysterectomy. So neither of these options for surgery are going to cure your endometriosis. The benefit of these surgeries, and this is why I would always recommend these surgeries over hysterectomy, is that it's not a life-altering surgery. If you may want children, if you don't want to impact your fertility, then talk to your surgeon, talk to your referrer about your fertility options after the surgery that they're recommending, because that may also play a factor in deciding which surgery you go for. But at least both of these surgeries leave that door open. Also, in terms of long-term impacts, neither of these surgeries will have the same, or should have the same, impact that a hysterectomy will have. So we don't have the added complications of enforced menopause. We don't have all of the potential health consequences that go with that. So I would definitely always recommend these two surgeries over hysterectomy. Whichever surgery you go for, like I say, depends on many factors. It depends on the skill of the surgeon. It depends on the type and severity and deepness of the endometriosis you have. The crucial thing is what you do after the surgery. So like I said in the last episode, when I recommend, in inverted commas, surgery, or when I talk to people about having surgery, I always view surgery as an opportunity almost to wipe the slate clean, to start from zero. So how you recover, or what you do to facilitate your recovery, and how you approach your body and approach your endometriosis following the surgery is the absolute key to this. All too often we view endometriosis surgery as the end point, when actually I firmly believe we need to shift that belief. We need to shift that view to viewing endometriosis almost as a reset, exactly the same as a reboot on the computer. You're rebooting your endometriosis, I suppose. You're rebooting whatever it is that's causing your endo, that's flaring your endo. You're giving it a blank slate. So if you can then start to look at your natural management, you can then start to look at symptoms, triggers, causes, and then you are giving your body the best chance of recovering after the surgery, but you're also giving your body the maximum chance of endometriosis not returning. Is that a double negative? Anyway, you know what I'm saying. So whichever option you choose, whether you opt for ablation, excision, even hysterectomy, if you're opting for any of those surgical interventions, then go into it with a mindset of, okay, this is going to boost my body, this is going to give me the short-term relief that I need. And in that period, in that time where my body's recovering, where I'm understanding my body, where I'm reconnecting with my body, that's when we're going to start looking at ways to naturally stop the endometriosis from returning. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives a little bit of a quick insight for anybody who is a little bit confused about the surgery options that are available, and just helps maybe solidify some ideas as well. There's going to be a couple of weeks off now when I relax with my family over summer. So whatever you're doing over the warmer months, I hope you have a fabulous time. Please do get in touch if you have any ideas for future podcasts, if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer. If you do want to come along to one of my health clinics, you can book a slot on the website. They are essentially drop-in, they're completely anonymous, they're recorded as well, so you don't have to attend live, but you ask me questions and I answer them in the session. And then, like I say, you're either there live or you get the recording afterwards. My endometriosis empowerment workbook is still free for podcast listeners. My endometriosis empowerment bundle, if you want to start looking at that natural approach, is still available at a massive discount for you podcast listeners as well. I wish you a fabulous summer. Get in touch for next season's podcast titles if you want to. It would be massively appreciated, because it's so much easier if I have something to talk about rather than sitting and trying to think about what to talk about every episode. So please do get in touch if there is a question that you'd like me to answer or something that you'd like me to rant about. If not, I shall just see you next time. Wishing you all the very best.